Alright, so welcome to the Servine Smackdown. We're doing shit, people are talking. Introduce yourselves if you so feel like. I'm Voltage.
Hey, I'm Vooper.
Hello, hello, hello. It is your boy, Tack, the MC.
It's Simbo. I'm objectively correct here.
Objective fact. What to say when your opinion is clearly correct. Yes.
Exactly.
Crystal,
What the fuck?
Who the fuck just said I'm Vooper?
I'm also Vooper.
But yeah. Okay, let's do a quick recap. Basically, Viper says what? Go on, Viper.
Okay, so my argument right now is from three perspectives. One is that it doesn't fit engineering policy. Two is that it's not worthy of an unhealthy ban with its effect on rows because you can't make bans based on things that you expect to happen in the future, and it sets bad precedent with NFE being only in its infant stages, and instead we should follow previous precedent. And my third one is that there really is not a lot of time, and after Servine bans, the meta is going to be very unstable.
Okay, my summary to that is Servine fits not just unhealthy, but to some extent other parts of other policies are mostly uncompetitive with glare and that entire like bullshit essentially. But on top of that, timing I admit is an issue, but at the same time, I'd say from June onwards, that was when Servine started picking steam. Like at the same time, we had the opportunity to burn it, or was at least suspected before NFEPL, but that didn't come to fruition. But at the same time, I think it's unfair to keep something in if it's arguably busted and a majority of the community does want suspected just because we've run out of time. At the same time, that gives us an issue with Gen 8 because no one will really trust council if this doesn't at least get suspected.
I mean, I've already agreed I'm suspecting it.
Is that
I've said this
confirmed?
like 5 times now, where it's gonna be suspected.
Is that confirmed?
No, I've confirmed it like in thread as well, I'm pretty sure.
When?
You have not confirmed
Directly
it. Brad.
after? Yeah, I don't think you confirmed it.
And directly after NFEPL, probably during finals. During finals or semis, the room tours probably go up, or whatever we end up using for qualifications
Doing room tours
to vote.
like the end of NF.
During finals, that seems like a very bad
Yeah,
idea.
that doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
but
think
we're
it
running
has to
short
be
on time.
directly.
Just wait till it's done.
I don't know, we can discuss it later, but I'm open to a suspect. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, that's fine. Like, that's half the thing I was arguing for, to be honest. At least the suspect. Because, like, my biggest issue right now is probably the fact that too much of the community wants it suspected for us to ignore it. I think if you walk into Gen 8 going, nah, no Servine suspect, that similarly sets an awful precedent of council does whatever it wants.
And no one
But
wants to
what I
play meta
also
like
think
that.
is like the loudest voices are also the one who want Servine. Like I've gotten PMs from people saying that they don't want Servine banned. Like, and they're on the council, so like, it's a balance.
Well, likewise, I have a lot of PMs from people saying the opposite. That's the issue.
I'm just saying, like, you make it sound like it's everyone, but yeah, if everybody on council wanted a Servine suspect, it would have happened long ago.
I disagree. Because the issue is, like, well, right now, I don't know if you, well, actually, I don't think I'm allowed to leak, but there is, yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about with council, but the VR update, that objectively took a month and a half or a 10-minute job. So,
Okay, yeah, but that was when we were like fully dead. Like that was finals time for a lot of people, and especially me. And I don't know, like 5 people wouldn't fill in their stuff, so it should be faster from now on.
Yeah, but that's like part. I think that's part of the reason why Serv didn't get suspected earlier, because it just came at a bad time. Like it was just after the awful pillage
I'm
league.
not suggesting that like the time is good, and my argument shouldn't be surrounded on we didn't suspect it before, so now it's unable to be suspected. Like I'm gonna suspect. I'm just saying I don't think it's smart. Yeah. There you go. I'm doing it with what I have.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't know.
Okay, so
He-
now do we want to run down the thing? My
or your
post?
tiering post, or
I think that would be a good start.
Let's run down the post.
wait, let me.
Okay, so uncompetitive thread. It's like the first section of tiering policy is uncompetitive. It's elements that reduce the effect of player choice or interaction to the end in extreme degrees, such as more skillful play is almost always rendered irrelevant.
Shout out to Glare.
Alright, so
So-
you want an argument for this, or are you going to go over it? Because I can provide a relatively valid argument for this. If
I'll just like restate the main parts of my post for this part, and then you guys can say what you want. So the three parts that tiering policy cites is that it can be matchup related, such as baton pass, external factors such as endless battle clause, and probability management issues such as Oko's, evasion, or moody. So Servine is nowhere near the same as baton pass and has many checks, both offensive and defensive counters. And there's a lot of counterplay where the more skillful player can win, especially with team building skill that comes in with you building teams around stuff like Marini with knock. To cripple the Servine, you can build teams without even rows, as we mentioned earlier. And then the third one, which is this can be probability management issues. I stated in my post that this is the one place where I think Servine could be considered ban-worthy because of how defog works with evasion on contrary Servine. However, I think that there's enough like this. Whenever you balance the skillful play with it, it's not in player's best interest to just sit there and defog a Servine. And if the other player switches a Servine in, that might be different. And there's always Glare, which we've talked about. But
Shout outs
yeah,
to Glare.
okay, you guys can go over stuff now.
Well, half the issue with defog is that Servine does switch into almost every defogger we have, except Vol. Like, it easily switches into Vib. It easily switches into nearly every tome. You have to specifically tech out Toxic, which means you're absolute garbage versus Rose. It switches into opposing Serv fairly well. What other defoggers do we have? Is that it?
Staravia doesn't switch
Staravia?
into. Rolla doesn't switch into.
Yeah, it's only Vol and Star, but similarly, like, they're not. Well, Volaby's good versus Rose, but Star isn't, because you either have to give up your Machoke matchup or your Rose matchup, depending on whether you go Fizz Def or Spadef. That's the issue. It's not just Serv,
Okay,
it's
but,
only
like,
also...
Okay,
Come on.
I'm gonna hit them with the bring this back. We're not talking about Rose.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Rose is ultimately kind of off topic in this instance.
Alright, fair play.
Okay. Tack, would you like
we-
to say anything? Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Zach, sorry.
Alright, should I get into my point about how I consider Servine uncompetitive?
Go for it.
Yeah.
Alright, so I'm gonna bring a specific set into this. Dato versus Kitajoh in best of 3 during week 2 of PL.
Fuck that series.
Okay.
They're
That was a interesting series.
Incredibly competitive, yeah.
Go Roses.
I mean, both players
of
kind of
games
played.
that were played.
Yeah.
At
Tack, just give
important
me a
times.
summary, because I forget which one you're talking about.
Oh, Dato clicked a glare against everything. Everything got parried. Dato was playing really questionably the entire time.
Okay.
And Kitajoh was
To be honest.
couldn't
Like-
get a read, but like
Yeah, it was very unclean.
it was an unclean set, yeah. But if Glare had not completely locked Kitajoh out of the end game, he would have won.
Yeah, it was the end game that was the issue, because K2 did keep his Grimer as healthy as possible for as long as possible.
He
But it was
played
literally just the-
correctly, and he just couldn't win because Glare locked him out of the game when it shouldn't
I mean,
have.
like, what you'll have to prove to me is that there's this distinction between that and Thunderwave.
Well, Glare's
Well, the
able to do
distinction-
some grass
Wonder
types
Wave
too.
was-
Because I think like
that's the biggest
paralysis
thing.
is a thing that's common.
Like, in
Yeah, the
addition
biggest-
to checking grass types, or no, excuse me, ground types, like, you can do that with Glare too. You can't do that with Thunderwave. Even
Yeah,
if
but
it's
like what
Gamma,
ground
like
types are
Scarf
switching
Gamma.
into Servine? Servine isn't like
Right. I'm not saying it's switching in. I'm just
so.
saying. In
Okay,
general,
my few things on that is that sure,
That too.
100% accuracy. Take that. My main thing on that is that one, you generally have like 1 or 2 defensive Servine checks per team, depending on how you build it. And if the Servine player keeps on clicking Glare and you keep on going into the same Pokemon, it's not going to get paralyzed again. It takes a level of prediction and skill to get all of the different Pokemon paralyzed because you have to click Glare at different times. If the Grimer was paralyzed and it got paralyzed multiple times, that's just unlucky. That's not. I can't ban a Pokemon for that.
I guess
No,
my
but
question is like, yes, it does take a level of skill to play that well, but the potential to
But
play that
Dado
well and have it be there
also
still exists.
At all. That particular set, the glare happened at the very end game and just locked up the game when it shouldn't have. Dado should not have won based off of how he played the end.
Okay, but like another example, Clefairy with Thunder Wave. Clefairy can get past its checks if it has Thunder Wave.
But
it
nowhere
doesn't do
near
it as efficiently.
reliability
Because I
that
made this
Servine
point.
can. Servine needs one
As
turn.
efficiency, okay, but like T-Wave, Calm Mind, Moonblast, Soft Boiled, Clefairy. That can do the same thing that you're saying Servine does.
But
Except
Servine also
in
has
triple
Clef is
non-
even more busted.
That Servine would take. Or
I'm saying that there are many sweepers in every metagame that whenever you like have a paralyzed move and it paralyzes the Pokemon 3 times, the Pokemon gets around its check. And I don't think that's unheard of.
No, but the issue is Servine
Does it
does,
with
like I
one.
made this point as well, it does what other Pokemon would need at least 3 turns to do in 1 turn. Like it has a nasty plot and an attack in 1 turn. Clefairy needs like what, 2 turns to get to +2? If it needs to soft boil, if it needs to attack. Like you need multiple powers. Servine 1 power changes the game. Especially in an end
Sure,
game.
but Clef also has like better defenses and stuff on like better base stats.
no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It does not.
Pretty sure.
Oh,
I will pull it up
Clef
right
also
now.
has 106 speed. Like it doesn't. Most of the stuff it T-waves is faster than it after anyway. Like this is Gen 7, not Gen 6.
Yeah, I'm saying like Clefairy runs different stuff though. Like you have Servine, which is running a fast set with like special defense usually,
Yeah, but even the min speed sets.
and then you literally have like a Clefairy which runs bulky. Like they're different sets, different. I'm not gonna argue that point. I'm saying that Thunder Wave is generally a move where you can get around your checks. Servine is more efficient at it, and like I said, this is the only place I consider it ban worthy because of its use in Glare and getting boosted in evasion. But I don't think that you're gonna be able to convince me on this by just repeating that, like showing me replays where Glare was used and somebody got unlucky.
Well, the thing is, we don't necessarily have to convince just you. If this convinces other council members, it's just as well. Like, this isn't specifically to change your mind. It's to give the community a balanced argument on
I mean,
Serv.
I'd prefer if you talk to me about it because we're like discussing.
Simba's never gonna be able to persuade you because you're kind of set in stone with your idea of what.
No,
Servine is.
I'm like, you guys have gotten close to convincing me at points. I'm just gonna keep going. Like at this point, I'm somewhat playing devil's advocate as well.
Simba's trying to play like mean TVZ Russo. I think this is what you were. Maybe. Like,
First I've voted no ban on Gligar. That man's never voting ban on Servo.
Yeah.
I've given up.
That's why I instantly regret saying Russo.
No, Friso has the best metagame picks.
The only person the entire tier who thinks Gligar wasn't busted.
Yeah, Simbo
Also,
just
keep
plays
in
around
mind,
them
you
with his
tell
weird
us-
skill.
you say that we are using this as the only argument when it was the first argument brought up.
What do you mean?
Hey, we've got more to go down. Come on, let's go.
Okay. Do you wanna move to Broken now?
Sure.
Yeah, if you want.
Okay, so Broken is elements that are too good, relevant to more skillful plays, are rendered irrelevant. So
Ow.
these they are broken because they almost dictate or require usage, and a standard team without one of them is facing a standard team with one of them, it would be at a drastic disadvantage. And these elements are Pokemon which only counters or checks are extraordinary niche. So what I responded with this was, many teams do not run a Servine and are still fine. You have times where Rose are used, or you have times when both Rose and Servine are not used, and they can still balance the meta pretty well. Servine is not an end-all be-all to the stuff it checks. Like, it's not the only way to check water, it's not the only way to check grounds. To the second one, there are many counters and checks, how I've said. There's like Rose, there's Slig, there's Togue. You have the checks that you run down as well. I don't want to repeat this again because I feel like I've said this list 3 times. But you have these Pokemon, and then you also have like more niche Pokemon, and that's a way to increase diversity, which is actually more of a point towards the third one. So I feel like that's actually a plus.
The issue is you get to a point where too much like Zubat. Can you explain the Zubat phenomenon to me?
I mean, Zubat actually won its game.
I do. I think that Zubat is a case where people decided to experiment with ways they probably enjoyed themselves by using a Zubat and winning a game. Increases how much people like the meta, increases different Pokemon you can use.
But it has two.
Diversity is a good thing. I'm not saying that like Zubat is the best Pokemon right now. I'm saying that the fact that people can use Zubat and win games shows that
But you could
diversity is there, and
also
diversity
throw
is
that
good.
the other way around. The fact that people have gotten to a point where they're like, yeah, you know what, this Zubat fits on this team. I'm in a position where, like, this
Okay,
is
but they're not
as well.
forced to use that. There are many more viable checks and counters.
No, but the thing is, if you go all the way down to Zubat, that means you've gone to a point where Zubat fits on your specific team and nothing else does. Like, you wouldn't use, it's got 245 BST. You wouldn't use it seriously unless there was a
Well, I
genuine
understand,
niche to
but I'm
fulfill.
saying that. Okay, but there are many Pokemon that, like, I've thought, like, in NFE Ubers, people are like, wow, we should use Trapinch to try and, like, trap Clefairy stuff. And while Trapinch generally doesn't have, like, the best stats and is an LC Pokemon,
You
it's
mean, like,
used to check
Chansey?
other things. You have people like, hey, I'm gonna use Bronzor, and I'm gonna use Salandit. And those are fun. They're not the only ways to check the stuff. But because they're there, people can build more team styles. I'm not saying that. I feel like if nobody is forced to use Zubat, and if people use Zubat, it's because they want to for their own enjoyment. And I'm not gonna say that because people are finding enjoyment out of using Zubat, that means that Servine is anything more than it is. Gets.
The thing is, though, I don't know, because it's tough. It gets to a point where, because I think there's got to be a balance between balance or diversity and, because it was like Pillar Swine. Is Bronzor a good thing in a Pillar Swine meta? Is it actually a sign that it's healthy that there's diversity, or is it a sign that Pillar Swine's so broken people feel mandated? I think that's
Oh no,
the
it was
balance you've got to
definitely the
strike.
latter. We banned Pillow because it didn't have checks, and Bronzor was the best counter, and it was niche. Like, that's why we banned it, and it's gone.
But you can similarly make an argument. Like, I could easily play devil advocate.
No,
and go,
because I've shown that, like,
Salandit.
Rose exists, Slig exists, there's, like, even things like Grimer, there's Togue, there's checks and counters like the fast stuff, like Haunter, Staravia, etc. Like, you're not forced to use it. In Zubat's, in Pilo's case, Bronzor was the best check. In Servine's case, it's Rose. Rose is very good, and Rose will only get better if Servine goes, in my opinion, because the teams that were using Serv before, they fill that slot in with Rose. They swap their Spiker from, like, Marini to Wartortle to get rid of hazards.
I don't know. I think we're going to agree to disagree here. That's the issue.
Rose and
Because
Snow don't do the same thing. Like,
They fill the
what?
void of, like, a grass type, and Rose teams will only get more popular. Like, I think bulky, like, in a Servine Gone world, bulky offense with Rose and, like, a water type, plus maybe, like, a Pond just gets much better.
And the setup also gets better, and setup preys on Rose. Your Harkers, your...
Yeah, but you have, like, that's why I'm saying Pawn gets an increase in usage, because, like, Duosion gets stopped by Pawn. Or, like, you get, like, Crocodile. I don't know, the meta will get balanced, but it'll be rock, paper, scissors. Like, Servine, in my opinion, adds another layer.
Oh, but like Servine is to me, you know, Booper, that I play NU as the main tier, and Servine to me is kinda like Vileplume on some style. It kinda glued the tier, but at the same time it was too over centralizing, and even if it fixes some points of it, it made it broken on its own.
The difference
I'm not too
between-
familiar with the Vileplume suspect. Do you know like why it was banned?
Vileplume basically was banned because it was at the same time a very bulky Grassmon that could wall a lot of Pokemon on the tier, and at the same time, thanks to growth and strength up, it was able to sweep teams. So we can extrapolate this to Leafstorm and how bulky it's Serv on some point. Not to mention that Vileplume, as in the same way as Rose, in usage is huge.
Okay, but like that to me sounds like its use of string stat made it uncompetitive. Or like yeah, uncompetitive. And I've already said that I'm fine with like thinking about a Servine ban there. If we ban Servine, I think we put it under that for precedent reasons. Like in a world where we ban Servine, I'm literally like gonna rewrite history and I'm gonna say instead of us banning it under unhealthy, we ban it under uncompetitive.
Well, yeah, that makes sense, because uncompetitive is where it probably fits black and white the most in tiering policy.
Yeah, because I don't want to put this under unhealthy. That just looks bad whenever you look at like history stuff.
I don't know, it's just some, the issue is from a meta perspective, because like, you can argue TP all you want, and you do need justification from TP at the end of the day. I think we do have that with Glare, but I still think the crux of the argument lies in the fact that you've got 3 massive brokens. It's an over-centralization of threats. Like, I've played this meta for at least a year, and ever since April, it's gotten increasingly harder, I think, even with this new stuff coming out, to prep for just everything at the top. If you try and prep too much for one, like Servine, where you need at minimum 1 defensive counter and probably at least 2 ways of offensively revenging it, but offensively revenging it is likewise difficult because you got to prep for both 220 and 291. Like, I can give you a specific replay of K2 Lockjaw, where Lockjaw had Banded Staravia, he had a Lampent, I think Furium Z Lampent, he had a Pawniard,
Off, though.
he had opposing Serv. No, it wasn't Scarf because Servine outsped. But again, it was one of those things where like he had 4 Pokemon for 220 and nothing for 291. Because like stuff like Monferno and Staravia, you need to scarf them if you want consistent, reliable ways for revenging 291. That's like one of my biggest issues.
Isn't that the game where like the evasion stuff happened though?
Evasion didn't
Yeah, but-
matter. Evasion did not matter. Like he
Evasion did not
dodged it
matter
now.
for that game.
Like
I mean, okay. By the way, I thank you for mentioning Lampent. I actually forgot that Pokemon existed for a sec. But yeah, that's another one.
but it only checks 220 is the issue. Like
Over because it was
that's my
291
biggest issue with
Servine
Serv right
instead
now.
of
From a team building perspective, you have to prepare for the defenses of 220 and the speed
Timbo,
of 291.
Can I think that a lot of your arguments are surrounded by bulky offense teams prepping for Servine bulky offense teams. However, there are more styles of team building.
Yeah, I know.
And
but it's
those
HO.
also, like, if you run a more offensive team, it can generally deal with Servine, because all the offensive Pokemon deal with Servine in some way aside from, like, Electabuzz. Like, Frog hits it like a truck, Haunter does a lot.
Haunter does 60 without Z. Frog doesn't 2-hit KO unless it's Life Orb.
I mean, I've seen the stuff, you knock off a Servine, and it dies. Like,
I don't know, the issue is it's
talking
like,
about Serv Wars, if you have Serv v Serv, if one of them is knocked, you knock the Servine. You have Marini, knocks the Servine.
the biggest issue here, I think, is the fact that we're obviously going to argue for and against our side in the sense of I'm going to play out to make stuff harder, and you're obviously going to make it out to be easier. I think from a playing perspective, if you look at NFEPL replays, I think you'll see that Servine there's too many games where it just either Glare wins, or it itself wins, or some aspect of it has a long-term impact.
Like I said,
far
evasion
beyond
or
what-
glare is what I'm teetering on. But I've seen many replays where Servine loses as well because people, a Alolan Grimer comes in, hits it with a knockoff as Servine tries to muscle through, and then the Servine dies to something offensive later. Where Roselia comes in, if Servine ever tries to finish these Pokemon off, it probably takes damage in the process if you're playing well.
Yes, but the issue is Servine is so bulky, it can easily synth up on at least a third of the meta. Like your Clefs, your bulky
Then you just
waters,
bring in the
your
revenge
Toads.
killers. Most Pokemon, like even Vibrava, what you're saying it goes into, you have U-turn, you have doubling, which rewards the better player. Like you have a lot of things, you have a lot of options still.
The thing is, though, like this, this is why I tried to pin this all on healthy, because I think 70% of the issue is Servine and 30 is like Rose, in the sense of if you look at Servine defensive counterplay, most of it is awful against. Like I know this isn't a tiering policy argument. This goes beyond to like unhealthy, and is more just a metagame argument. But most of the defensive counterplay that does well against Servine loses to Rose. Like all your steel types lose to Servine. They're incredible against Rose. Like defensive Spadef Togetic, great versus Serv, Earth, awful versus Rose. Vibrava, great versus Rose, awful versus Serv. Like you do play this 50-50 in Builder almost, because they have almost equal usage. But if you try to overly prep for one, which is fair because they're both like very pressurizing, and you get the other, you're instantly at a disadvantage, especially with Rose spikes as well, and just
Okay,
how.
so what I'm gonna say is that we should wrap this up by going down on healthy, and then I really want to hear your argument for why you think that Rose usage gets more balanced if Servine goes.
Do you want to hear that now or after unhealthy?
We can go now, but and then I'll also preface by saying like, take this with a grain of salt because I might not consider this too much. Because, like I said, I generally think that you don't do bans for perceived metagame benefits.
No, I agree with that. You shouldn't ban a metagame based on what happens after. But the issue, like I said, you got too many threats. Too many threats. It's gone to a point where you can't prep for all of them adequately, and you will lose too often, too much. And with Serv, you have to over prep for it to such an extent that you leave yourself open to too much else, or too many other Pokemon. But with the Rose thing, I think Quill's the big one.
I mean, like, Quill is equally able to be, like, broken down by offensive sweepers, bringing more Pawn back in. You beat Pawn with stuff like Machoke. The stuff that beats Machoke, it keeps on going.
Like, my main logic for Roselia being worse in post-serve is that, well, firstly, you no longer need it. Not as much, because spikes are still broken, but if Rose gets overused, Choke becomes a lot better, because Rose is Spadef, Choke is the Fizz Def Breaker. Quill is a spiker that beats Rose, and it can taunt a lot of defoggers. Your setup
Okay.
gets better like it should. Quill will become
Yeah,
probably more
but-
popular.
Simple, like, in your original post, you said that one of the biggest reasons that you dislike the meta is because of Rose v Rose Spike Wars. However, whenever you ban, like, Servine, in my opinion, more Rose gets used, and then the Rose checks the Rose, so Spike Wars. But then if Rose isn't used, the next best check is Koladin, which also uses spikes. So you're just adding more spikes and getting rid of a defogger, which seems counterintuitive to what you're trying to accomplish.
But the thing is, Quilladin is easily... Like, the defoggers have a far better matchup versus Quilladin. Toga has a better matchup. Vib... Yeah, well, Vib's good against both. But the issue is, like, it's Roselia's offensive stats as well. Like, 100 special attack is nothing to laugh at. Like, you see, it's like, when you flip the switch and use offensive Rose, like, he has, like, the 5th best special attack in the tier, I think.
Yeah,
Like-
offensive Rose is great.
Like, that's the issue. Quill, if you max, it's really bulky. It's far easily to exploit. Rose is still quite offensive, even if it's max. And if you do go more offensive, it becomes even better. That's the issue.
I think something Reaper's like overlooked is the fact that Core gets taunt, so it actually prevents fights. Well, I don't know.
Oh yeah, true. So last thing, unhealthy, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, because you've got to go in like what?
Okay,
Well,
so
you've got to go in like 4 minutes.
unhealthy. Yeah, I'll be fine. I think it's starting late, anyways.
Yeah.
So,
it's-
preface saying this is the most controversial and subjective one, and therefore will be used the most sparingly. And then when trying to argue a particular element's status, please avoid the category. I just want to say that for the recording, cause
Yeet. Shout out
I don't know,
to
you all know I'm-
shoutouts to recording.
That's true. Voltage edits it
Let's go
out.
Voltage, please recording god.
not done. Okay.
Look, I'm not saying
so
I'm going to
then,
be doing much editing
these
on
are
this,
elements
but
that may not either limit team building or battling skill enough individually, but combine to cause an effect that is undesirable for the metagame. And then the second one is state of the metagame. If the metagame has too much diversity or too little diversity, none of which are broken on their own, we may seek to add Pokemon. The second one, we're not adding any Pokemon, so I'm not going to deal with that. Also, there's
not adding
not too
anything.
much diversity in
Yeah,
NFT
we're
in
not
this game.
adding Golbat.
There's nothing left to
Free go
add
back.
that would not be ridiculous.
Yeah, so the first one, I think that, like, sure, you have Glare and Evasion, which fits on the young competitive stuff, but you still have, like... I think that the meta is still, like, developing, it's still fun, people are being able to use more Pokemon that they can, and, like, you have additions to, like, more people using Z-moves and stuff, which feel like needs to be explored more. And you have more offensive and defensive checks that can be used on different styles of teams. Like, I don't feel like team building skill is neglected enough. And like I said with battling skill, I feel like that's the only place I'd budge with the glare and the probability with the evasion.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of precedent, that would be it. If Servine gets banned, it would be glare and uncompetitive. You wouldn't go down unhealthy unless you had no other choice, really.
Okay.
Like, that's what we use if Servine does get banned.
Okay, sure.
But who knows? Like, the issue is like, I don't know. It's too. I think the timing is probably the biggest issue. If this happened like 3 months ago or 2 months ago, it probably would have been a lot better, or like pre-NFEPL.
True, but today there's like not a lot of there wasn't a lot of reason to do it before NFEPL, and also like NFEPL was a big deal. Like I'm using this to pole vault into some secret stuff.
I'm sure
Is
you
it-
are. Are we finally becoming real?
is NFE a real
going
meta
down.
I'm
yet?
doing my best. Okay, so I think we're good. Exactly an hour. GG.
To be fair, I haven't been
Yeah,
recording a whole
Volti-
hour. It's probably been closer to about 45 minutes, but all the same, I think it
Yeah, it
covers a
doesn't
lot
matter.
of points. Yeah, I feel like you
Oh.
got most of your points out. So, if there's anything else anyone wants to
Sand
say,
Burbine.
there it is.
Sand
San
Burbine.
Verv.
3 gold bet.
Honestly, give me Chansey. It's a perfect answer to Servine, you know?
No, do not do that.
Yes, do it, just to make him mad.
Wash
Guys, we should
your
just ban
bring back
Eviolite.
Gerda.
Guys,
Middle Cup had the right
Yeah,
idea the whole
free
time.
Gerda.
Like,
Gerda
middle
wasn't
cup.
free cap NFE.
Guys, Middle Cup
No.
had the right idea the whole time. We just need to ban Eviolite.
And free Rhydon at the same time.
Hell no.
Not gonna lie, I'm
Yeah.
curious to see if Rhydon would actually lose to Servine. Prob-
I mean,
Uh,
Megahorn
Rock
kinda.
Polygon
It always goes.
wins.
Just goes, what the fuck?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Megahorn just bops. Like, there's no chance of.
If Rhyhorn uses Rock Polish, Servine dies the horn.
yeah.
Assuming
We should
it-
free
Remember
Arena
the
Trap
calc.
and make horns.
I remember doing a calc on that once out of curiosity.
Okay, so I think we're good. I'm gonna dip. Bye, guys.
Alright, bye.
Reaper sucks.
Safe.
Alright, let's talk all about Wooper now. Not Vooper, just Wooper.
Eh,
Vuckle. Oh.
I'll win the argument, don't worry, lads. I'll be banned in 2 weeks.
Just wait till after NFEPL, please.
Yes,
please.
let's wait until after.
I'm fighting for the community, don't worry.
Look,
I
I'm
got
in no
this.
position to talk about stuff because I'm not on the VR council or anything, but like, Cap had Equilibra come in and Ormoth get banned in the same week, and the whole thing was just a shit show.
Yeah, I don't know how. I don't know what happened there because it was during your TT as well,
Yep.
wasn't it?
Yep.
That's like the biggest tournament of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Just completely shifted everything. Just
Mm-hmm.
everything 180. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. Needless to say, it was one of those events where you wonder, should the tournament have started after the introduction or what? But it's like basically over, so who cares?
I don't know. Cap TT is objectively the most, I want to say, interesting team tournament I've been a part of.
Yeah.
Like I think the best thing that happened was two things. Number one, did you know that the point system changed halfway through?
Wait, why?
Like, there was no
Why?
announcement.
Why?
It went from
is that even
3-1-0 to 2-1-0, and there was like zero announcement of it. Because I remember, like at the end of week 3, like 3 teams had 6 points, and when I looked back at week 5, and I was like, "Wait, the top 2 teams had 6 points? What happened?" And when I asked, and apparently they just got shifted down.
That's... You know, let's hope that it sort of turns around better for next year, if there is one next year.
I don't know.
Dude.
I just want to manage next tour for this, honestly. Like, actually manage and not just be fucking someone's ass man.
I'm
Next year
basically
we'll have 8
managing at this
teams.
point. Viper does nothing.
Dude, Viper did nothing last year. I don't know what you were expecting.
No, because he's my friend, so I didn't really mind.
Oh, fair enough, yeah.
And
I
besides,
mean-
like,
I
he
mean-
gets
I
blamed
mean-
for our losses.
True,
Like,
true.
Does Viper build? That's the one question.
No, I
wanna
had
know.
to build teams for Viper.
Nah, not really. He's not.
I
not
built
building.
for him.
Because last year, I remember he was my manager, and
It was
like,
awful.
that was my
Worst manager ever.
That was my first introduction to Cap, and I was like, I remember at the start, I was like, I can't build any teams. Make sure someone supplies me, and I ended up building 30% of the all teams. Like it was like 60% Sands and Tac, 30% me, and the Viper would just sit in the back and reuse.
Yeah. Like, it was just me, Sans, and fucking Simbo building, and that was it. And, like, it was a terrible time. It was a fun time. I made a damn good friend during that, but, like, holy shit, that was a terrible tour.
I think me,
How
you,
did-
and
Yeah, go on.
I think me, you, and Plaz guaranteed a tie every week. Like the
Pretty much. Like, the
like-
only time that we didn't guarantee a tie was, like, fucking 1 week where I lost to Raph, and the one where I gave up in semis because we
the
were
rest
already
is history.
0-3 with, like, Plaz dead and you lost your game.
Oh yeah, semis were a bad time. We got absolutely smashed. That was so bad. We got double ghosted every game. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Alright, well,
But yeah,
I'm gonna stop recording now, because it seems like this is kind of over.
It is.
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
it basically
anyway.
is like the argument.
Yeah, the debate, if you will, is over. So, that's all that needs to be said there. So, hope you all found this informative, I guess. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say, but thanks for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.